Well, here we are, final Oscar nomination predictions. I do not know what time this video is going up. I am recording it at like 6 p.m. Hopefully, as long as it goes up before the Oscar nominations themselves, I'm good. It's not that you can use these for predictions. Jeez. And I'm probably going to make another video right after the nominations reacting to them, kind of like I did last year. But this is the first time that I've actually posted these. What I did in the days when I was on Twitter, I would just post these on Twitter and have these stand as my final predictions. But now that I've been taken off the site, I need another way to just make my feelings on this matter known. And also, this will give me an opportunity to justify some of my predictions. So I'm going to start with the short film categories, starting with Best Documentary Short. The short categories are always the trickiest to predict. One thing that I have learned is you always want to go with any short film that has a unique or memorable title, because then that drastically increases the odds that voters will want to watch it and therefore nominate it. So that's why I have ABC as a book banning here. Also, Black Girls Play, Story of Hand Games, that one has gotten a lot of good reception. It is interesting because sometimes you really have to choose, like, what movies. Sometimes they want to go with movies that are, like, really important political, timely issues right now. And other times they want to go with more feel-good fluff that just makes you feel, like, warm and fuzzy inside. And so I tried to get a nice, like, balance between that. Obviously, there's the book banning one, but there's also Deciding Vote, which is about abortion. Camp Courage I almost went with, and that one is about war in Ukraine. But I don't know, it seemed almost too obvious to put in there. And Nine and WIPO, I think, is gonna get on, because that's just about a kid and his grandparents, and that's gotten some of the best reviews so far. And then I put Last Repair Shop in there. I don't know, like, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe I'm gonna get these right. I think I'm gonna have to, like, cross-reference what I usually get, but I don't usually do super well on the shorts. Best Animated Short, not a whole lot to say here. 95 Senses, I think, seems to be the frontrunner to win. It is interesting. Once Upon a Studio was obviously a very, very big deal for Disney, and that could feasibly win, but it could also feasibly not be nominated. There is a chance that some people might just see it as just a promotion for Disney and nothing more. I don't know. I think it should still have the warmth needed to get on. Letter to a Pig and Humo/Smoke are both Holocaust-related, and somehow I have a feeling they're not going to go for both of them, so I have Letter to a Pig being the Holocaust short that gets on, even though Humo/Smoke, I don't know. Letter to a Pig just seems... When I did my research, I just went on IMDb and I looked at the critics' scores as well as the how many awards this had previously been nominated for and won, and Letter to a Pig was winning in that regard. I do think Eva is going to be the serious short of the bunch, although it could also be 27, and War is Over, that seems to be... People really like the animation in that, and it's about war. So I feel pretty confident about this 5, as confident as you can feel about the shorts. Live action short is interesting, because there's a lot of shorts that have serious name recognition, a lot that have, like, serious actors. There's outside of Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, which is, of course, Wes Anderson, there's also Strange Way of Life, that is Pedro Almodovar, Pedro Pascal, Ethan Hawke, but I don't think that's getting nominated because it doesn't have the best reception. Everyone says it feels like the first act of the movie, and when it's over, you're like, where's the rest of it? But we have The After, which has David Oyelowo, we have The Shepherd, which has John Travolta, and the backing of Disney Plus and Alfonso Cuarón, so the same deal as with last year with Le Pupille. I'm not making the same mistake twice. There's one with Brittany Snow, there's one with Ben Whishaw. There's just a lot of big celebrities attached to a lot of these shorts. I do think An Avocado Pit is going to get on because of the narrative of that being the first trans filmmaker to be nominated. And Anne Frank Gift Shop, they like to nominate comedies, so I think that's comedy, but also Holocaust adjacent, which they love in the shorts. So I am watching out for Red, White, and Blue on Netflix because that's about abortion, and it's Netflix, and Brittany Snow's in it, and it's one of those cases. Sometimes it's best to leave off the most obvious one because sometimes the most obvious one can be nominated, can be snubbed. Sorry. Okay, that's probably about as much as I can say about about the short categories at this point. Let's move on to the categories you care about. Documentary feature. Okay, so this is, technically speaking, my one real no guts, no glory prediction. I don't have a ton of crazy out there predictions in most of these categories, but this one I do. And I'm not talking about still Michael J. Fox movie not making the cut, even though it's got by far the most precursors, because at this point we're all so used to the way the documentary branch works. They just don't go whichever one is the obvious frontrunner, especially if it's a celebrity doc or if it uses archival footage. They don't like to nominate those. I do think American Symphony will make it because it's more than a Cradle to Grave biography. It actually is telling this love story that I think a lot of voters are going to connect with. Outside of that, 20 Days in Mariupol and Beyond Utopia I do think are the frontrunners. Four Daughters are the long, strong notices. But my No Guts, No Glory that I was referencing earlier is Stamped from the Beginning. I haven't seen anyone put this in their 5. And I don't have a ton of good reason behind putting this in the 5, except everything else I'm unsure about. And this is one of the few documentaries that I've seen this year, and I think it's really well done and really timely, and I think a lot of voters are really going to connect with it. So for that reason, I've stamped from the beginning. You know what? You gotta have one No Guts, No Glory, and what the hell, this is mine. Outside of that, I don't know what to say about Going to Mars with Bobby Wine. Maybe they could get on, maybe they could not. I don't know. I feel really good that Still is not getting the nomination. For international feature, we have Zone of Interest, Society of the Snow, Taste of Things, Fallen Leaves, and Totem. Now, I almost had Teacher's Lounge, but I keep seeing the same criticisms about that the ending is underwhelming. And Perfect Days, I would have that, but it just, I don't know. The fact that it's Japan's entry, and it seems to be the third most popular Japanese movie this year behind Godzilla Minus One and Boy and the Heron, I think if Japan had submitted either one of those movies, there would have been enough passion to get it nominated, but Perfect Days is kind of flying under the radar a little bit. So, I don't know, I just keep hearing enough things about Totem to make me think that's the one to watch out for. Best Animated Feature. So this is the traditional 5. Spider-Verse, Boy and the Heron, Ninja Turtles, Elemental, and Nimona. I almost don't have a whole lot to add. I would not be predicting Ninja Turtles. I would normally be skeptical about that, but the Critics Guilds love that. And Nimona, I'm a little concerned, but it is Netflix, and I think it should make it. The only one that I think could miss is Elemental, because I think just the year that Disney is having, it just seems like a really bad year, and the Annie Awards, I think, made a statement by not nominating Elemental, and I think potentially the Oscars could do the same thing, but if Elemental does miss, then the one to pick up the slack would be Robot Dreams. But I don't know, I just don't know how much the animation branch has been seeing that. It might have been kind of flying under the radar a little bit. I don't really think anything else has a serious shot. For Best Sound, I have Oppenheimer, Zone of Interest, Ferrari, Maestro, and Killers of the Flower Moon. The Killer is a very close runner-up, but it's funny, I have heard some criticisms that Ferrari is not going to get in because there's issues with the ADR in that film, but remember, the way that they vote on these is they do this industry screenings where they play like 10 minutes of each movie. But they're allowed to use a selection from the film, and clearly for Ferrari they're going to choose a racing scene and not a dialogue scene, so I think the ADR issues are not going to be an issue when it comes to the bake-off. And Napoleon might happen, but I don't think so. If Barbie gets on, then we'll know it's really overperforming. But I do feel pretty confident about this 5. Original Song, this is kind of an expected lineup. It's the 2 Barbie songs plus Flamin' Hot, the Diane Warren song, the John Baptiste song, and the Rustin song. So outside of the Barbie songs, it is kind of a boring lineup, I grant you, but I don't really know if anything else has the passion it needs to get on, except for the third Barbie song, which cannot get on because of this lineup. Part of me thinks it's possible that Spider-Verse gets on, but I just don't know, or Quiet Eyes, but I think I'm just going to stay safe and predict the traditional, kind of boring top 5. For Best Original Score, I once again have kind of the safe predicted top 5. Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, Spider-Verse, and Zone of Interest. Now, this is not as boring a list as Song is. I think all of these scores are very good and worthy, and the bottom 3 are very eclectic and interesting and would be great nominees. I'm really concerned that they're just going to default to nominating John Williams for Indiana Jones. The reason I don't have him in is because he has not received a single nomination for that score. Like, I think almost all of the other scores have received a critics mention somewhere, but nothing for John Williams, rightfully so. So, I hope that it's this top 5. I would love to see Boy and the Heron show up, but for now, I'm just going to say it's probably the safe 5. Now, visual effects is a little bit interesting this year because the movies that are the top contenders are not Best Picture films, movies that don't really have a shot outside of this category. Guardians, The Creator, Godzilla -1. And Godzilla, even that could potentially miss due to reports about the way the VFX artists are treated, but I think that should still be safe. Poor Things, I don't know. I no longer think it's winning, and I feel like we kind of just have it in because it's a Best Picture movie, but sometimes look at Dunkirk or Shape of Water, both of those movies missed when they were Best Picture movies, and Poor Things could miss here, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that it gets on. And Society of the Snow, I think, should be safe. I think that should be a solid number 5 nominee for some of the stuff they had to do in that movie with the plane crash and all that. I took Spider-Verse out of the 5. If it gets it, I would love it. But for now, I'm just playing it very, very safe for that movie, just predicting it to get on for Animated Feature and Original Score, and that's it. If it gets that, then it'll only be a step above what Pinocchio did last year in terms of animated representation outside of Animated Feature. And then the other nominees in this category are possible, I guess. Maybe Indiana Jones, possibly Mission Impossible, but I'm going to stick with the top 5 for now. For Best Makeup and Hairstyling, now according to the podcast I was listening to, this is everybody's top 5. Everybody has Maestro, Poor Things, Golda, Oppenheimer, and Society of the Snow. It's a very predictable top 5, but I don't really know if any of the others are getting on. I mean, Killers, maybe, but at a certain point, I think that the Best Picture love for that movie can only go so far, and I don't know, I guess there's some makeup on Lily Gladstone in the section of the movie where she's sick, but I just don't think it's enough. And then Last Voyage of the Demeter, Poe is Afraid, those movies are possible, I guess, but the Academy does not like horror in this category, even when so many horror films have been deserving. So I think that top 5 is safe for makeup. Costume design is interesting. Okay, so before you were seeing the short list, now you see my top 40, and this is something that I don't just pick and choose movies for this top 40. I take the whole giant list of 300 plus movies and slowly whittle it down one by one to get to this list. That's why I'm so tired and the lead up to doing this. But, okay. I have Color Purple here, getting that 5th slot. And Color Purple could just be Daniel Brooks or bust, but I don't know. I think there's just enough showy work, and the whole pants scene near the end is meant to show off the costumes, and I don't know. I think they'll just want to throw that movie an extra bonus somewhere. Now, on top of course, Barbie, Poor Things, Killers, and yeah, Napoleon makes sense. They'll want to give that movie some nomination, and this category, it does make a certain degree of sense. Everything else, I just don't know. I really don't want Oppenheimer to get in because it's just the most generic men in suits. There's really nothing that special about the costumes. Maestro, maybe. Wonka would be cool, but it wasn't nominated at BAFTA, even though they should love a movie like that. So, yeah, I just don't know. Production design is interesting, though. we have the same top four, Barbie, Poor Things, Killers, Oppenheimer. Most people have this top four, and then the last slot, they're kind of split. Asteroid City has gotten the most critics mentioned, so it could get that slot, but I don't know. A few years ago, we all thought that French Dispatch was guaranteed to be nominated in this category, and it was not. And so it would just make sense for them to nominate Zone of Interest. I think the way that the Academy has been going recently with stuff like Parasite and The Father, this isn't exactly contemporary, but it is a different... It's production design that actually benefits the story in an interesting way because of the way that they built the house. So, yeah, that's the one that makes the most sense to me. For cinematography, I am going out on a slight limb here. Oppenheimer, Killers, Maestro, Poor Things, and then I have Saltburn. I think that this is going to be the movie's one nomination. Clearly, it does have a lot of support, and I feel like it would make sense for the movie to get one nomination somewhere, and this is the category where I feel it would be most deserving to get nominated. Now, it could also be Zone of Interest, but here's the thing. I don't know how many people, when they talk about the cinematography in that movie, are really talking about how the movie looks, what a visual experience it is, and more so just the unique things that they did with placing cameras in the house. Now, it reminds me a lot of what happened last year with Top Gun of, oh, we placed cameras in the cockpit of the plane, and because of that, it was supposedly the frontrunner of cinematography, but it missed the nomination. And I don't think they really think about the technicalities of where you had to put the camera. They think about if the shots look nice. So that tells me that Zone of Interest is probably not going to get on. Barbie conceivably could, but I just don't think they're going to double nominate Rodrigo Prieto. And El Conde, maybe, but that movie just has such a low profile. So yeah, the Saltburn nomination makes a lot of sense to me. Film editing. Here's where again, I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here, because Oppenheimer and Killers, of course. Barbie and Holdovers, I do still think should get on because of the comedic editing that a lot of voters seem to gravitate towards. And then Anatomy of a Fall, because it is sort of a thriller in the way that it's set up. That does mean I'm leaving off Poor Things. And a lot of people are predicting that one, but okay, to be perfectly honest, I'm starting to get a sense with some Academy voters that they're just a little bit weirded out by Poor Things. That there are some voters that just don't like this movie a whole lot, and I get the sense that it's going to underperform in a few categories. And you'll see what I mean coming up, wink wink, but for now, I think it makes sense to not predict Poor Things for editing, but I have Anatomy in there instead. If the Academy wants to do something really awesome, they could nominate Spider-Verse, but the Academy is not cool enough to do that. And now we come to the most boring category this year, which is Best Adapted Screenplay. Barbie, American Fiction, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Killers of the Flower Moon. In any order you want, it does not matter. Once Barbie moved from original to adapted, like, man, I just feel so sorry for those bubble contenders. Movies like All of Us Strangers and Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. This could have been the one nomination for either film, but instead it's all packed with these top Best Picture players, and no other movie has any chance to get on here. So it's just, it's frustrating. Like, there's no point even discussing this any further. It's going to be these 5 films. I would be absolutely shocked if it wasn't. Best Original Screenplay, though, is a little bit more up for debate. I have Holdovers, Anatomy of a Fall, Past Lives, May December, and Maestro. Now, I say it's more up for debate, but I do think it does kind of peter off after a couple of contenders, because Air could happen, but I don't know, I kind of feel like no one's really talking about that movie anymore. The fact that it's this close to an Oscar nomination is kind of crazy. It does have a bit of a narrative behind it, but I just feel like so many people have forgotten about it. And then Saltburn, maybe. I feel like this top 5 is also pretty solid, even though I really don't like the fact that Maestro is going to be nominated, because I think the screenplay is the weakest aspect of that movie. It'd be cool if something like Dream Scenario would have happened, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, so moving on from that, Oh, now we get to the acting categories, specifically the two supporting categories, which are maybe the two categories that caused me the biggest headaches. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel. I decided to play it safe for supporting actor: Robert Downey Jr., Ryan Gosling, Robert De Niro, Charles Melton, and Mark Ruffalo. Now, Willem Dafoe could easily get on. I could see both Poor Things actors get on. I could see Dafoe get on over Ruffalo, which is what happened at SAG. Sterling K. Brown has Critics' Choice in SAG, which, you know, could happen. And here's what's really frustrating. For the longest time, I was like, guys, Dominic Sessa is definitely happening. And now, like, the thing is, I think it still could happen, because there is wiggle room and we don't quite know, but if he gets on and Charles Melton gets on, I really don't want Charles Melton to miss, but if Melton and Sessa get on, then it's just two newcomers, and that feels weird, and the thing is, I can so easily see it happening, and which means I probably should be predicting it, so I can get the points, the clout, if it does happen. But, oh man, I'm just gonna play it safe. I'm just gonna play it safe. I feel bad for the others. I feel bad for the others. I think Sessa could happen. I want Sessa to happen, but I don't know. And it could be Dafoe. It could be. I have very little confidence in this category, which is why I'm going to move on and talk about another category I have very little confidence in: supporting actress. Okay, we have to find Joy Randolph. We have Emily Blunt. I cannot believe Emily Blunt is number 2. Like, how is she the one who's locked in this category when that character is so underwritten? And I have Danielle Brooks, who might potentially miss. The Color Purple could just pull a big fat goose egg and be and become a This Had Oscar Buzz episode. But I'm gonna leave her in for now. Now, America Ferrera, I still feel really good about. I know she only got Critics' Choice, but they gave her the whole See Her tribute at Critics' Choice, so I feel like she's secure. And then in the last slot, I just said, why not put Julianne Moore? Because I really don't know at this point. It could be Cruise. Cruise could get on with just SAG and nothing else. Sometimes we see people get on with none of the 4 major precursors, and that's why I'm still have not entirely given up hope that Rachel McAdams could happen. I want that to happen so much. And Jodie Foster, though, seems like a classic example of gets on at every major precursor and then misses the Oscar. I don't know. It just seems like no one is really enthusiastic about that movie and performance that much. Rosamund Pike could happen. Sandra Hüller could happen. Even Claire Foy I wouldn't entirely leave out. Like, there's a lot of stuff that could happen in this category, and I just don't know. I just don't know. I do not have much justification behind Julianne Moore, but I do feel confident about Ferrera. So we'll see what that does. Best Actor. Okay, now this I feel confident in. Giamatti, Murphy, Cooper, Wright, and Domingo. Now, I think DiCaprio is getting left off. He missed SAG, he missed BAFTA. All of the support behind that movie is on Lily Gladstone. People recognize what a big deal it would be for Wright and Domingo to get their first nominations. DiCaprio does not need another Oscar nomination at this stage of his career. I think people have just accepted that this is the narrative. And the funny thing is, there's almost a part of me that really wants to see Andrew Scott happen. Like, if he had shown up at BAFTA, I would be like, guys, what if? But he didn't show up at BAFTA. Somehow, despite that movie getting so much love outside of him. And yeah, I don't think anyone else outside of that 7 has a shot. So, solid top 5. I feel pretty good about it. It's weird. The categories where I'm the shortest on are either the categories I'm very confident in or the categories I'm not confident in. Let's see how long I can talk about Best Actress. So I do want to clarify, just because I have someone at number 1 position does not mean I necessarily think they're going to win. It's just in terms of what's most likely to get nominated. And right now I do have Stone ahead of Gladstone just because Gladstone somehow missed the BAFTA. But I will tell you this, Margot Robbie is getting on because she got on at all major precursors, including BAFTA, when they did not like the movie very much outside of her. And then Sandra Hüller, I feel pretty good about. If there is a shocking snub out of this 5, I think it's Carey Mulligan. And I'm very tempted to take out Carey Mulligan and put on Greta Lee. But I don't know. This is not, for some reason, this Oscars, I'm not in the mood to do a bunch of crazy wildcard things. So I'm going to leave Carey Mulligan on for now. I would love it if Greta Lee happened. But as for right now, I'm just going to leave her off and then hope for the best. And you may notice I have Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor in Origin very close, but that's just because that's attached to a movie that I'm going to talk about very shortly, a movie that may or may not be a bigger contender than we think. For Best Director, okay, this is a category where I have a lot to say, because Nolan and Scorsese, obviously. Jonathan Glazer, I think it's definitely happening, given the way people are reacting to that movie. And then, in the last two slots, most people have Lanthimos in there, and then the fifth slot is either Greta Gerwig or Alexander Payne. Now, a lot of people have taken to removing Greta Gerwig from their Best Director lineup and replacing her with Alexander Payne. I decided to take out Lanthimos. The reason why is it's kind of complicated, because as I said before, I think some Academy voters just are not jiving with Poor Things, are weirded out by the direction specifically. And for some reason, I think as I've been going through the regional groups, there's just been one too many critics groups that left off Lanthimos. And I'm starting to feel like maybe he's not as secure as everybody thinks it is, and I'm starting to see the writing on the wall a little bit. Plus, if we assume that Alexander Payne gets on, and at this point he's gotten on at BAFTA, which heavily implies at BAFTA, at VGA, he's gotten on before for movies that are much less flashy director-wise, so it does make sense that Payne would get on. So if we imagine that the last slot is between Gerwig and Lanthimos, well, they're both movies about female empowerment, and one of them has a female director and the other one has a male director. So read into that what you will. I don't know, it would be one thing if Gerwig missed, but the fact that we also have Celine Song and Justine Triet, we have all of these really strong outings by female directors this year. If there were no female directors in this lineup, the internet would absolutely lose their minds, justifiably so. And so I will acknowledge that that is a possibility, but I really, really don't want it to happen, and I am willing into existence that Yorgos Lanthimos gets the shocking snub instead of Greta Gerwig. However, I will say here and now, if Greta Gerwig does get snubbed, and people are furious about it, I could see a world where, much like with Ben Affleck for Argo, the shock about that snub and the backlash eventually translates to the movie winning picture. Like, if Greta Gerwig misses Best Director for Barbie, that could potentially result in Barbie overtaking Oppenheimer in Best Picture. But only if that happens. Like, I'm finally coming around to Oppenheimer as a Best Picture winner, but, like, that's the way that Oppenheimer could lose. Which finally leads us to quite possibly the most predictable Best Picture lineup in a long time. Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Barbie, Holdovers, Poor Things, American Fiction, Past Lives, Maestro, Zone of Interest, Anatomy of a Fall. Okay, so as soon as the PGA lineup was announced, and it was this exact lineup, then people said, it's over. Like, nothing else can surprise, because the PGA so rarely nominate non-American movies. And so for them to nominate Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall, those are the two movies that were the most vulnerable at PGA. Most people did not think either of them was going to get on. And the fact that they both did, it seems like there's no real room for there to be any movement in this category. It seems like this is the 10. Because even if one of these movies were vulnerable, what's number 11? The movie I have at number 11 right now is Origin, and that's just because Frances Fisher is pushing it. And she worked wonders for Andrea Riseborough last year, but the problem is the Andrea Riseborough campaign was very, very focused on her in the lead actress category, but the Origin campaign is just general. She's just like, hey, please check out this movie. And it's not specifically saying Best Picture or Best Actress or Best Screenplay. So we're not really sure, because it's not really focused, I don't know if it's going to happen. Plus, if it did somehow get into Best Picture, is it just getting the Best Picture nomination and nothing else? Because I don't really know if it stands a realistic shot at getting in any other category. And then, okay, this bugs me. I have Spider-Verse at 12. I think Spider-Verse is legitimately close, which makes this whole thing so frustrating. It'd be less frustrating if it were further back and it didn't have a chance, but the thing is, I know it's there. I know it's like waiting to see if any other movie could be vulnerable in the race. I was so ready, you guys. I was hearing talk that this movie was gonna get the PGA nomination, and if it had happened, I would have been like, here we go, this is happening. And because it missed, I can't predict it. And it is so infuriating to watch this happen year after year after year with great animated movies. So I'm just gonna try to get over that, and whenever Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out, let's make this happen, alright? Let's make sure that we don't sleep on another animated film getting left out. And yeah, there's kind of nothing else left to say. It's a very, very solid top 10. And a lot of these categories seem like there's not... It seems like there's not a ton of room for there to be big surprises. I know there's going to be some surprises, but maybe this Oscars, the nomination lineup is going to be a little bit more normal than we're used to seeing. With that said, yeah, I'm finally done talking about this. Let me just edit this and publish this as fast as I can, and I will see you tomorrow with my thoughts on the Oscar nominations. Take care.